Here's an ugly sight. A couple of weeks ago, a YouTuber asked me a question about the COSO gauge and the speed adapter thingamabob that I use, that thing, and what the setting I used on the COSO gauge was. So I came out here and did this, and it looked just like that, a bunch of nothing. Yesterday I started working on the NC2 Restore bike, and I walked out here to get something and I said, yeah, I gotta fix this thing. It was really bothering me that I have this bike sitting here that had a seemingly dead battery or something. I checked the battery with the ignition off and it was fully charged. As soon as I turned the ignition on, everything went dead. First I thought it might be the key switch shorting out or something, so I got the NC2 key switch and hooked it up, and it did the same exact thing. So I took the headlight off, and at that time the headlight bucket was still on there. Of course, most of that wiring resides inside that bucket. As soon as I took the headlight off and disconnected it, I went and turned the key switch again, and the gauge came on, but it was freaking out, so I didn't know what was going on. At that point I measured the voltage on the battery with the headlight disconnected and turning the key switch on, and it was only measuring about 6 volts. When I turned the key switch off, the battery would come back to full life. So I started disconnecting wires one at a time. I would disconnect one thing, go up, turn the key switch on, see if there was any change, disconnect something else, go to the key switch, turn it on, see if there's any change, and nope, nothing would change. After I had disconnected every wire in here, and it was still doing the same thing. I pulled all the fuses out. I started checking wires to see if I had a wire shorted to ground or something. Turned the key switch on, everything was fine. I started putting these fuses in one at a time. When I put the headlight fuse back in, it did that same thing. I turned the key switch on, it went to 6 volts. So I thought something was wrong with the headlight circuit, which is the 12 volts comes in here, comes out on this side. So I spent hours and hours troubleshooting this black-blue wire circuit. I even went to the yellow bike and checked to see what the results were, checking the circuit on that bike. And just checking that circuit on the yellow bike, I was getting the same result. So I took that fuse back out, put that one back in. I think it was okay after that. Then I put the power valve fuse back in, and it did something weird again. So I looked at the schematic, and the power valve circuit is somehow tied in to this circuit also. I'm not going to try to explain it. I then realized the only thing that I hadn't disconnected, I mean everything's disconnected, right? Everything. These power valve controller connectors were buried inside here. I had to remove a couple things to get in there and disconnect this controller. And after I did that, when I turned the ignition switch on, everything worked fine. I took the power valve controller from the NC2 and plugged it in, and it stayed good. I could turn the ignition switch on, everything was fine. This is the one that was in this bike. I hooked it back up, and now let's turn it on. I just disconnected a trickle charger, so the voltage is a little high on the battery right now. Everything is disconnected right now. Oh, I have all the fuses in. Turn the key on. Uh-oh, there it went. Okay, so last night when I plugged this thing in, re-plugged it in, it was fine. Now it's bad again. Let's do this one more time. Turn it on. The voltage drops way down. There's no tail light. Now I'll hook up the NC2 power valve controller. That guy's plugged in. 12.68 volts with the key off. Turn the key on. Oh no. I thought I had this thing figured out last night, changing the power valve controller, because it actually worked. Everything worked as it should. This morning I come back out and I turned everything on and it's not working again. Everything is disconnected still except the power valve controller. So I put that one back on. It still didn't work. Then went back here, said, oh, I don't have my rear light disconnected yet. When I disconnected that, it seemed to work. Everything is working as it should. I just reconnected the taillight harness with no light bulbs in it. Turn it on. No short. This is freaking me out now. I just turned the key switch on. The voltage dropped. There's the taillight. Turn the key switch off. It pops back up. Disconnect the taillight harness. Turn the key switch on. Off. On. This is a 5-year-old battery. I'm going to go take the battery out of the yellow bike and put it in here. There's the yellow bike battery. There's the current voltage. Let's turn the key switch on. And I think we have our answer. Darn it. It's kind of good, kind of bad. Bad that I wasted 6 or 8 hours trying to troubleshoot this thing when it appears all it needs is a new one of those little things right there. Check it one more time. Yep. So 6 or 8 hours later, I determined I need a new battery. The good news is I can put this thing all back together, go order a battery. I'll probably put the new battery in the yellow bike since I ride it all the time. And what a lot of effort for that. Oh well, lesson learned, huh? I think I have that rat's nest back together, everything all plugged in. Got the voltmeter hooked up to the battery. Says 12.8 volts. The only thing not plugged in at the moment is the headlight. I think I have everything else plugged in. Let's see what happens. Well, that sounds good. Looks like the tack is not blown up. That's good. At one point I thought that thing was hosed up, maybe shorted inside or something. Wow. Got a blinker on? Not anymore. Nice. Got a tail light. In celebration of a small victory. Let's see if this thing will start up. This bike's back in its resting spot. Lesson learned, just because your battery displays 12.6 volts doesn't mean it's good. Next time I'll know to test the battery a little more extensively before I launch into a 6 or 8 hour rework thing that I didn't need to do. But I guess it's a happy ending. Everything's working again. This was the culprit. It could not handle the slightest little bit of load and led poor old dumb me on a wild goose chase.